Hong Kong was built on greed, and making money is still what it does best. This Asian mini-dragon has the most freewheeling capitalists on earth and an incredible export machine. Hong Kong pours out toys, clothing, radios, and increasingly, its own people, who are afraid of what will happen when Hong Kong falls back into communist hands. Uncertainty makes Hong Kong the most anxious mini-dragon. Will China smother the fires of enterprise and send more people fleeing to America? Or will Hong Kong's energy help change China? Either way, the fate of this fabulous trading center will affect our future. South Korea, Singapore, Hong Kong, Taiwan. Centuries of tradition and culture. Devastated in war. Now, the new economic powers of Asia. South Korea, Singapore, Hong Kong, Taiwan. These are the mini-dragons.
Whoever would have guessed that a small fishing village on a barren rock, 1/3 the size of Long Island, would one day become the jewel of the Orient, trading capital of the world. Now this rock glistens with prosperity. It is a world of quick money and a fast buck, where fortunes have been made and lost overnight. It is a borrowed place living on borrowed time, time that may be running out. This is Hong Kong.
It is midnight on the South China Sea. A small junk from mainland China has strayed across the border into Hong Kong's territorial waters. She is boarded and thoroughly searched by the Royal Hong Kong Police. This is the way it has been for more than 150 years. A tiny British colony, barely half the size of Long Island, dictating the law to China. But in 1997, all this will change when the lease expires and Hong Kong returns to Chinese rule. When China raises the red star over Hong Kong, one of the purest forms of capitalism on earth will be left in the hands of the world's largest communist state. What effect will this dramatic change have upon the 5 million Hong Kong people that created this wildly successful place? Will they stay, or will they leave? May Lo was 17 when she applied for work as a production assistant at a major Hong Kong film studio. Instead, she landed a minor role in a kung fu movie. Today, May Lo is a rising star who sees 1997 as the deadline for fame and fortune. Regina Hua was born in Hong Kong, but educated in Montreal. She has come home to the delicate task of attracting foreign investment. An uncertain future makes her job difficult. Gordon Wu is taking his own elevator to the 64th floor of the office tower he built. He is literally rising above Wan Chai, the honky-tonk neighborhood where he was born and raised. Gordon Wu sees Hong Kong's reunion with China as a business opportunity that comes once in a lifetime. If he's right, he will win in a very big way. If he's wrong, he stands the chance of losing everything. A few years ago, Albert Chan was a cop walking a beat. Today, he is a senior officer within the Royal Hong Kong Police. But in 1997, the police will no longer be royal, and Albert Chan may be out of a job. When Albert Chan assembles his men each morning, he wears the uniform of a British commanding officer and the insignia of the Royal Hong Kong Police.
第二樣就係非法入境者方面咧，就係話根據最近嘅 II 案件嚟講咧，我哋發覺咧就係咧嗰個 II 個情況亦都係非常之嚴重啊！喺呢個柴灣、筲箕灣、三家村。The language is Cantonese, but the tradition is deeply rooted in 19th century Britain. These 8 earnest men with their smart uniforms and bright blue ditty bags share a rather awesome responsibility. In a land founded by outlaws, they are charged with maintaining law and order. If it were not for this fine deep-water port, Hong Kong would not exist. When China outlawed opium, British traders found a safe haven for their smuggling operations on the small islands of the Pearl River Delta. In 1842, they established a colony on Hong Kong Island. Her trade regulations were written by men seeking a free port. Their legacy has made Victoria Harbour the busiest in the world. Each container is the size of a boxcar, and at least 500 line the decks of this freighter alone. With more than 100,000 ships calling every year, the opportunity abounds for Hong Kong traders to follow in the footsteps of their forefathers. In a place where smuggling is a venerated tradition, Albert Chan plays a distinctly unpleasant guessing game. Of all the ships in Victoria Harbour, who is inside and who is outside the wavering line of Hong Kong law? A small armada of junks bring Hong Kong's fresh food from China every day. The short boat ride provides the Chinese crews with an opportunity to make huge profits by sneaking in the odd antique, bolt of silk, or refugee. It is an opportunity seldom overlooked by the Chinese crews, and Albert Chan never looks the other way.
Smuggling has existed in Hong Kong for a long time, and the law often protects smugglers. If the paperwork is not in order, we can take action. But even if we suspect they are smugglers and they have obtained the appropriate permits, we are powerless.
This morning's opening round is not a loss for Albert Chan. In the shell game that is Hong Kong's illicit trade, the police are not the enemy. They are, quite simply, referees. Gordon Wu's office is a control tower that coordinates his massive projects around the Pacific Rim. From this inner sanctum, he is planning the construction of Hong Kong's tallest hotel, designing a new mass transit system for Bangkok, and building his most ambitious project, a 200-mile highway that will link Hong Kong with the growing industrial region of southern China.
Hong Kong is in a unique position because we sit at the doorstep of China. Opportunities here are enormous because it's 1.1 billion people marching to modernization. Once they sort out the system, then China will grow and Hong Kong will grow on top of it. What I wanted to do is probably get our trains running down here, right? Mm-hmm. And the urban freeway coming down here. And then coming down here, and then go over.
Gordon Wu sketches freehand across city blocks and leaves his engineers to fill in the details.
Some kind of alignment like this. That goes to the other side of the river.
Which this or
Yeah,
the urban freeway?
The whole thing, including the local road.
You mean the whole structure like you have it?
Sure.
The whole works?
Yes.
I see. Well, they have 3 levels here, right?
Well, you have the urban freeway you got to worry about. You got to have the local road you got to worry about, and then you have the trains coming in this way.
Yeah. That would be complicated.
Yeah, but that's what bloody engineers are for.
Gordon Wu's road to China is the kind of project normally reserved for governments. It's the equivalent of building a 4-lane highway from Baltimore to New York and includes 2 bridges larger than the Golden Gate. Gordon Wu has bet everything that Hong Kong will emerge at the center of a vast industrial region spreading across southern China and linked together by his superhighway. But 1997 may prove to be the one milestone his road will never reach. She is being chauffeured in a limousine, but for Mei Lo, it's an ordinary trip to the factory in the company car. Hong Kong is Hollywood on the South China Sea. The place once famous for making millions of plastic flowers now cranks out more than 100 movies every year. Mei Lo is working to assure herself a place on this assembly line that leads to fame and fortune.
I never thought of myself as a movie star. Frankly, I'm just a high school graduate that got lucky. Right now, my schedule is very tight. I'm starring in 4 films. If we don't make at least 5 or 6 films a year, we can't maintain our standard of living.
Action!
There are no unions, and a 20-hour day is not uncommon. They shoot a feature film in 2 weeks and edit in 6. They'll invest $1 million to make it and double their money on the opening weekend. Mei Lo has just completed a small scene for one of her current films. By the end of the week, she will have appeared in 4 others. To her fans, she is a glamorous movie queen. But in reality, Mei Lo is trying to cram her life's work into the few short years before 1997. Regina Hua has coordinated the visits of many foreign delegations, but none more important than today's guests from Switzerland.
I guess prior to the Swiss arrival to Hong Kong, I was more excited than nervous because these are very prominent figures in the Swiss business community, and I'm dying to meet them and really to introduce the different aspects of Hong Kong.
Nice to see you. I have brought here the delegates. This is very sorry here, Mr. Flora. Hello. Mr. Kuster, Dr. Teller. Hello, and Mr. Bonnie.
Hello, Mr. Bonnie. Nice meeting you.
Thank you very much for receiving us, anyway.
I'll be going with you to the hotel.
Okay.
She has invited a few of Hong Kong's inner circle to attend a reception welcoming this delegation of Swiss business leaders.
My name is
It is the first step in a highly choreographed visit designed to reassure them that in spite of 1997, Hong Kong's future is very bright. No small task, considering that they are hard-nosed members of the International Club of High Finance. Each of them will form an opinion about Hong Kong that will be repeated behind closed doors around the world.
We feel confident that you will find in the next few days ample confirmation that Hong Kong is indeed the leading international trading center that it has been perceived to be for some years now. And I think more importantly, that it will continue to prosper for many years to come.
Regina has launched them on a whirlwind tour designed to convince these mild-mannered men in suits that everything in British Hong Kong is going remarkably well.
No one visiting Hong Kong can fail to be impressed by those spectacular buildings forming the famous Hong Kong skyline.
So not many printers can do it, but if it is supposed to be sent to, let's say, places like Philippines or Singapore, it only have a shelf life of about 6 days. So we must get it to the customer as quickly as possible. In Hong Kong, we issue this magazine at 8 o'clock, and by about lunchtime, you'll be able to buy a copy of Asia Week in town at about 12 to 1 o'clock.
What Regina wants the Swiss to realize is that the place once described as a barren rock with hardly a house upon it has become one of the world's most successful manufacturing and trading centers.
With the up-and-coming Asian marketplace, we are finding something we never really thought we could achieve before, which is really attracting the affluent Japanese, Taiwanese, the Hong Kong upper level, and they're coming in force and starting to buy. This part of the world is really on fire, and I've got to say that it's on fire. Let's hope that it continues, because it's exciting to be part of it.
Nice to meet you. Thank you very much.
If the Swiss were to fly home this evening, they would return with visions of a capitalist fantasy land dancing in their heads. Whether or not this rosy image will fade remains to be seen. If Victoria Harbor is the shining symbol of modern Hong Kong, then the typhoon shelters at water's edge are a reminder of her darker past. When Albert Chan wears his police uniform here, he's on the wrong side of town. In another time, these densely packed marinas were tiny fishing villages. Today, they are floating cities for thousands of people overflowing from the crowded metropolis. The chaos that results from whole city blocks arriving and departing on the tide provides the perfect cover for a multitude of sins. The shipping pier known as Western Praia has been the hub of trade between China and the world for at least 100 years. With his launch at anchor, Albert's unpleasant guessing game becomes almost impossible. He is unlikely to ask men with hooks to open their boxes.
我都明白你問題，即係有時我哋咧有困難嘅工作，譬如揾到大陸船，有啲貨喺度，我哋唔知道個物主喺邊。咁變咗我哋即係，我教你知啦，呢個由嗰頭至到呢頭幾長㗎啦，你即係睇都睇唔晒咁遠㗎嘛。好啊，唔該晒你貴姓啊？我姓黃嘅。我姓陳。係。唔該晒。唔該。
His presence on the Western Praia could hardly be described as welcome. Within this underworld, not all the money is tainted. Most of the mainland Chinese crews that call on Hong Kong are prohibited by law from setting foot on her soil, but they still have to eat. In a classic example of Hong Kong's ability to fill every economic niche, a cumbersome immigration law has become a lucrative source of income for an industry of floating cafes.
When you're born in Hong Kong, you must fight for a lot of things. Getting to work or onto a bus requires a struggle. For people in the West, their lives are more secure. In Hong Kong, if you don't work hard, you simply cannot survive.
Most of the people who live in the typhoon shelters will survive 1997. A carton of untaxed cigarettes or an extra pound of tea is the difference between success or failure, and that will never change. But as Chinese rule approaches, the fate of Albert Chan remains unknown. He might be tolerated because his knowledge is required to manage the world's busiest harbor. On the other hand, he could wake up one morning without a job because he worked hand in hand with the occupying British force.
And then on the property, let's use this as the revised cost. Right?
Okay.
Costs. What we have not done is work on the expenditure.
Gordon Wu's plan for China's first superhighway is brilliant, but his financing proposal to build it is visionary.
It's going to be more substantial than.
Yeah, and this should increase
than 100 million, because that is.
He will raise more than $1 billion for construction, and his company, Hopewell Holdings, will build the road. China contributes the land, which is state-owned, and agrees to split the tolls with Hopewell. When the contract expires, China owns a highway it didn't pay for, and Gordon Wu has made millions.
It's more than that. Surely it's more than that.
Before he collects the tolls, he needs the money to build the road. So he has asked a few American bankers to join him on his yacht for dinner. Over the next few hours, he will try to convince these fiscal conservatives that a capitalist expressway to communist China offers a sound investment.
But Gordon, the Bank of China overlooks us all. That's right. Well, our house was the tallest in Hong Kong. For about 10 years.
Yours? Which one is yours now?
The round one?
How tall is the Bank of China, Gordon?
That's about 1,030 feet.
And how many stories?
70.
70, and yours is?
66.
66. Well, they had to build it taller, didn't they?
Yeah.
Gordon Wu is on a fishing expedition, trying to land the international financing for his highway.
My proposal is to make a tunnel here, Jack. See, this tunnel here is a very short one. You can go to that island, and then a causeway through that.
Okay, and the tunnel would be joined to the main island?
This one here, they build it up or by trestles or whatever. It's a piece of cake. That's my philosophy in business. You know, I calculate what the other guy wants, and then I try to satisfy what his needs are, and I go from that point. Yeah. I never try to do anything fancy.
In fact, I would say that in today's environment, Morgan Stanley is probably the only firm that could successfully complete a high-yield bond offering, a junk bond offering right now. And we've got, in our leveraged buyout fund, we've got $1.5 billion of, you know, unused equity spending power.
That's a better size. That's a better size.
Gordon Wu is risking everything on the promise that China will continue to modernize, and that traffic on his road will be bumper to bumper. All that remains is to convince a skeptical world that he's right. With his brother home from Paris, it is a family reunion. There are 3 generations at the table, and each was born in a different country. His mother and father are from Shanghai. Albert, his wife and brother were born in Hong Kong, and his brother's children are natives of France. As the conversation turns to life in Paris, nagging questions arise that have crossed every family table in Hong Kong. More than 1,000 people are leaving every week. These photos of Albert's recent visit to Paris are snapshots from his past, but they also provide a glimpse into what may become his future. Across town, 2 members of the Swiss delegation have slipped out of their hotel and found their way to the Thieves' Market on Temple Street. The stands go up every night, and for 5 or 6 hours, this ordinary street becomes a life-size Chinese puzzle. A box in a box, with each one holding more treasures than the last.
Come on. Trendy. Very good. Okay. Same. Trendy, okay. Thumblinka. Good, this is good. Trendy, okay. Come on.
One factory the Swiss will never visit makes the wheels for the plastic cars. It is both home and work for Mr. and Mrs. Lam. They came to Hong Kong with the flood of more than 1 million Chinese refugees escaping the Communist Revolution in 1949. Soon after Chairman Mao came to power, China severed all contact with the outside world. The Hong Kong economy shifted from trade to manufacturing, and skilled refugees like the Lambs transformed a bleak future into a global success story. They live in this squatter town rent-free along with hundreds of other small industrialists. To accommodate the waves of refugees, the government has been replacing these tin shacks with high-rise apartments. Within the freewheeling capitalism of Hong Kong, 50% of the population now lives in public housing.
When I first left China, I had to cross the river. I was wet from head to toe, and all I had in the world was the shirt on my back. Do you have any idea how I managed to do it all by myself? Do you know what these machines cost? Do you think it's easy making a few $100,000 Hong Kong dollars? Do you know what kind of place Hong Kong is?
For the Lambs, 1997 poses no dilemma. They have already risked their lives once to escape the communists. If they feel threatened, they will not hesitate to move again.
Okay, cash down 30.
These high-powered Swiss executives are used to negotiating for millions of dollars. Tonight, they have bartered with a Hong Kong woman over the price of a plastic toy.
Thank you.
Bye.
She was not intimidated, and they walk away thinking they got a good deal. That simple fact may be the most important lesson they ever learn about doing business in Hong Kong. Across Victoria Harbour, Mei Lo is attending the opening reception for her latest film. Although they are larger than life, everyone in this room knows that they are about to be upstaged by real events. Mei Lo is reaching for fame with one eye on the camera and the other on the calendar. 1997 has forced her to work harder to succeed in the world's most competitive city. Long after Mei Lo's premiere has ended, Albert Chan has just begun patrolling the Hong Kong border with China. Darkness finds the legitimate traders sleeping and the smugglers hard at work. It seems as though the waiting has paid off. Albert and his crew have intercepted a junk that is overflowing with cigarettes being smuggled to China. The smugglers purchase these Chinese cigarettes tax-free in Hong Kong. By smuggling them back to China, the People's Republic is robbed of the significant tax that 50 cases would bring. Within Hong Kong, the shipment is perfectly legal. But once the captain crosses the border into China, he is a criminal in a country that executes pickpockets. Even though they have been caught committing a crime, Hong Kong law protects the smuggler in Hong Kong waters. Once again, Albert Chen has been defeated by the same law he is asked to enforce. He has succeeded in delaying the junk by a few hours, but he knows that tonight the captain will unload his illegal cargo in China, and by morning he will be back in Hong Kong for more. It is a game of cat and mouse, where the cats make all the rules, but the mice always win. This is the way it has been in Hong Kong for 150 years, a wildly chaotic place where order is barely maintained by the loyalty of men like Albert Chan. Sadly, his loyalty is rewarded with indifference, for he and thousands like him hold no British passport and have nowhere to go in 1997. Today, the Swiss delegation will travel less than 30 miles from Hong Kong to visit a capitalist boomtown that is inside the People's Republic of China. It is known as the Shenzhen Special Economic Zone, and it is an oasis of success within the gloomy Chinese economy. Shenzhen is often held up as an example of the openness that economic reform requires. In reality, it is the only way that China can compete with Taiwan, South Korea, or Singapore. Shenzhen's success is a product of the perfect deal. Hong Kong investors put up the money to build the factories, and Hong Kong managers oversee production. China provides the land and legions of eager workers. In fact, Hong Kong now employs more people in China than it does at home. If Shenzhen is any indication, then Hong Kong's reunion with China could create an economic miracle overshadowing Japan or any of the mini-dragons. But the architects of these bold economic reforms are the same people struggling with the hardliners in Beijing for the control of China's future. This afternoon's luncheon is hosted by a Shenzhen official charged with attracting foreign investment. If selling Hong Kong to the Swiss has been tough, selling China may prove impossible.
You know, we heard a lot about openness and keeping everything open. And for the first time in my life, I was forced to throw the Hong Kong newspaper away at the border. I wasn't even allowed to read my own newspaper. How does this have anything to do with openness? I mean, cannot one, not even in Shenzhen, one can't even read a harmless newspaper from Hong Kong.
你这个问题是个政治问题，我是搞经济的，我还没有能力答复你这个问题。
Your question is a political one, and I am in charge of the economical side, so I cannot answer you this question.
So if I can't read Chinese, I get no news.
This is a political question, and you're only responsible for the economy. Do you think that from the economic point of view, this political answer helps for future cooperation and investment?
可能呢，有的时候松，有的时候再紧。这个
Now, you know, in a political point of view, sometimes in China, sometimes it's stress and sometimes it's relaxed because it's not, you know, up to myself, you know, up to what I think.
Sure, Mr. Tom, that you would answer many more critical questions with a smile, but Mr. Walter has pointed out that time is moving and we should keep on the program, so I think we thank you very much for your openness.
The Swiss have been brought to Shenzhen because Hong Kong has an enormous stake in its success. If a few Hong Kongers can create the largest economic boom in China, then maybe Beijing will hear it and begin to see Hong Kong as the key to their own success.
I think we have a lot of things. I think we have got a lot of things in common.
But with one hand extended in a gesture of openness and the other confiscating their newspaper, the Swiss aren't buying. This afternoon, a British official will try to convince them that a new treaty called the Basic Law will guarantee Hong Kong's future for the next 50 years.
Last year was not very easy, as you will all be aware. In March of 1989, I could have confidently got this far and said that things were going extremely well, and we expected them to continue going well. But then we had the student democracy movement in Peking from April until June last year. Consequently, the blow on the 4th of June, when that movement was crushed, and the subsequent suppression of it, has had a very depressing effect on people in Hong Kong, to the extent where we have generally described ourselves as suffering from something of a confidence crisis.
As we are well aware of the fact that the People's Republic of China has some financial problems, I think this year they're supposed to pay back some 10 billion US dollars, and they don't have the funds for that. And rich Hong Kong might be in a position in the long run to pay for such debts.
The Hong Kong government will have the same kind of autonomy that it presently enjoys from Britain. London does not dictate those things to us. London does not tax us. Neither will Peking after 1997.
To save the face, that's a very important thing for Chinese. Are you not afraid that you explained us very well on a rational basis all the evolution, but you are not afraid of such irrational events in future which could damage Hong Kong?
But are you asking some specific sort of Chinese irrationality that we're worried about? I mean, they might. You mean they might tear up the agreement or something like that?
I just can't see that there will be not some sort of taxation of Hong Kong which will be financing part of Beijing or whosoever.
That will be a categorical breach of the Sino-British agreement. Now, we go back then to the question of, will the Chinese tear this up or not? You know, I mean, it's... Speculation.
The Swiss may have departed Hong Kong unconvinced, but Regina Hua is staying. Her Canadian passport gives her the right to leave, but she remains steadfast in her commitment to convince a nervous world that Hong Kong's future is secure. Regina Hua is not alone. In early 1989, Gordon Wu took his Chinese highway to the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. By the 1st of June, the financing proposal to fund the road was 90% subscribed. 3 days later, it collapsed.
We're supposed to receive that 3.861 billion Hong Kong dollars on the 5th of June. And obviously on the 4th of June, there was shooting. And there were a lot of dead bodies in Beijing. I remember about a week before June 4th, I went to see Willie Purvis, and I told Willie that I was rather worried about the developments in Beijing. And Willie said that, you know, no matter what happens, Gordon, you must keep on building the superhighway. It's important for Hong Kong. I say, yes, I agree with you. We will build a superhighway no matter what happens.
The crackdown at Tiananmen Square may have frightened off the bankers, but Gordon Wu's vision remained unshaken.
I think Tiananmen Square is just one incident. I think the march forward has got to go on because it's, at the end of the day, it's a bottom line. All the political talk and all the waving of the red flag will never get you that color television. And I've noticed that once people watch color TV, they never want to go back to black and white.
When investors abandoned his road, Gordon Wu reached into his own pocket. One man is personally bankrolling a 200-mile highway. But like the bridges that link the two countries, the road remains unfinished. 4 lanes reach out from China, but only 2 come out from Hong Kong to greet them.
That looks impressive. It's a very big building, that one, yeah.
Gordon Wu's personal fortune is not unlimited. Today, he and his financial advisors inspect the new border station in preparation for their return to the banks for additional construction loans.
Well, this is the beginning of the highway network. We can go after you've gone through the customs and the immigration. You connect directly with the highway link. And when we do that, hopefully by this Christmas, we should be able to get the first cars rolling. In a way, this is like Taiwan and San Diego. I haven't been inside this building. Let's go inside and see what it is. Since we paid for it.
He has the reputation for building massive projects that require billions of dollars. But since the killings in Tiananmen Square, banks are cool to lend. It now appears that the only thing Gordon Wu cannot build is confidence in Hong Kong's future.
If there's 200,000 cars on a day on that road, then you think what the cash flow looks like.
We're bargaining less than that and we'll make it work.
I mean, a couple billion US dollars a year, you know, just on top.
Yeah.
No, I don't think I'll see 200,000. But I'll tell you what, I'll live to see 100,000. I've seen the Jersey Turnpike, the growth of the Jersey Turnpike in the 50s to the 80s. I think the highway makes a lot of sense. Although some bankers, I won't name them, they think that government guarantee is the only solution. I have no time for these people. We can tell them to go to hell.
Given China's internal struggle and Hong Kong's imminent return, will his highway ever see a single car? Or, as some chillingly suggest, will it simply become a fast track for Chinese tanks? It is not China that is stopping Gordon Wu, but the fear of an uncertain future. And if uncertainty can stop a powerful man who is a billboard for Hong Kong's success, then what will happen to Albert Chan, Regina Hua, Mei Lo, and 5 million other Hong Kong people? One thing is certain. If the wind blowing from Beijing to Hong Kong turns any colder, then her best and brightest will have already left with the British in 1997. Hong Kong's greatest export may become her own people.
Hong Kong's future will always depend on what happens in China, a nation struggling to reform its economy while keeping its own brand of socialism. Can China open up its economy without changing its political system? The mini dragons we have seen in this series, South Korea, Taiwan, and Singapore, have faced the same dilemma. They learned that free market economies bring prosperity, but also demands for more democracy. The hour you have just seen raises a lot of ifs. If the wind from Beijing blows colder, if uncertainty about the future leads foreign investors to flee, and if Hong Kong's best and brightest continue to leave. But these are only ifs, posing a giant question mark over Hong Kong's future. The guessing game is a study in contrast. On the one hand, the doomsayers predict that China will crack down and reshape Hong Kong in its own image. On the other hand, the pragmatists say China will recognize that both stand to benefit by letting Hong Kong continue to flourish as the trade and financial center of the Pacific. On paper, at least, Hong Kong's new constitution, drafted by the Chinese, promises to maintain the status quo for 50 years, with Hong Kong remaining a free port, pursuing a policy of free trade. Despite these assurances, many are skeptical about China's promise. Like good gamblers, those who can afford it are hedging their bets. One son goes to Vancouver, another to Sydney. The family business is moved to Singapore, to London, or often here to San Francisco. Last year, over 60,000 people left Hong Kong. That's 50% more than the previous year. But even the most skeptical keep their options open, just in case a Chinese Hong Kong works. You remember Gordon Wu, the industrialist who was trying to build a road to China? Well, to update you, he finally raised the $800 million to finance his superhighway. He managed it by getting the communists and capitalists to work together. His loan is being underwritten by a consortium of Western banks and the state-owned Bank of China. But there are disturbing signs as well. Signs that China is already preparing to rule Hong Kong. Recently, China complained about Hong Kong's plans to build a new airport. To many in Hong Kong, that seemed like an interference. But Chinese officials said that the $16 billion project would clean out Hong Kong's treasury, and that was very much China's business. In the end, the British governor agreed to consult with China on a new airport. This is just one example of things to come. Hundreds of issues will have to be sorted out between the departing British and the new landlords. In the long run, Hong Kong may be a vital force for changing China. Thousands of Hong Kong factories have sprung up in southern China, making it the country's economic leader. More and more, Hong Kong is becoming the commercial center of China and the spearhead of its growth. Indeed, if all goes well, it could look more like Hong Kong has taken over China, if all goes well. But whatever happens, America stands to benefit from a surge of industrious and highly skilled immigrants from Hong Kong. Already, Asians generally account for 40% of all immigrants to this country. They are our fastest growing ethnic group. By the turn of the century, we'll have 10 million Asian Americans. I think this is just the kind of spice our melting pot needs. These are the kind of people who turn poor little countries into fabulous mini dragons.
You've just seen the final episode of Mini Dragons, and we hope you've enjoyed the series. Later in July, watch for another chance to visit foreign countries on the exciting series Adventure. And now, join us for the premiere of the 4th season of POV, returning to Channel 11. The series presents the provocative points of view of independent filmmakers in nonfiction. Don't miss POV. Next.
Funding by Financial Guarantee Insurance Company, helping provide financial strength, security, liquidity. FGIC AAA Bond Insurance, tomorrow's security.
Hong Kong was built on greed, and making money is still what it does best. This Asian mini-dragon has the most freewheeling capitalists on earth and an incredible export machine. Hong Kong pours out toys, clothing, radios, and increasingly, its own people, who are afraid of what will happen when Hong Kong falls back into communist hands. Uncertainty makes Hong Kong the most anxious mini-dragon. Will China smother the fires of enterprise and send more people fleeing to America? Or will Hong Kong's energy help change China? Either way, the fate of this fabulous trading center will affect our future. South Korea, Singapore, Hong Kong, Taiwan. Centuries of tradition and culture. Devastated in war. Now, the new economic powers of Asia. South Korea, Singapore, Hong Kong, Taiwan. These are the mini dragons.
Whoever would have guessed that a small fishing village on a barren rock, 1/3 the size of Long Island, would one day become the jewel of the Orient, trading capital of the world.
第二樣就係非法入境者方面咧，就係話咧，根據最近嘅 II 案件嚟講咧，我哋發覺咧就係咧，嗰個 II 個情況亦都係非常之嚴重啊！喺呢個柴灣、筲箕灣、三家村。
The language is Cantonese, but the tradition is deeply rooted in 19th century Britain. These 8 earnest men with their smart uniforms and bright blue ditty bags share a rather awesome responsibility. In a land founded by outlaws, they are charged with maintaining law and order. If it were not for this fine deep water port, Hong Kong would not exist. When China outlawed opium, British traders found a safe haven for their smuggling operations on the small islands of the Pearl River Delta. In 1842, they established a colony on Hong Kong Island. Her trade regulations were written by men seeking a free port. Their legacy has made Victoria Harbor the busiest in the world. Each container is the size of a boxcar, and at least 500 line the decks of this freighter alone. With more than 100,000 ships calling every year, the opportunity abounds for Hong Kong traders to follow in the footsteps of their forefathers. In a place where smuggling is a venerated tradition, Albert Chan plays a distinctly unpleasant guessing game. Of all the ships in Victoria Harbor, who is inside and who is outside the wavering line of Hong Kong law? A small armada of junks bring Hong Kong's fresh food from China every day. The short boat ride provides the Chinese crews with an opportunity to make huge profits by sneaking in the odd antique, bolt of silk, or refugee. It is an opportunity seldom overlooked by the Chinese crews, and Albert Chan never looks the other way.
Smuggling has existed in Hong Kong for a long time, and the law often protects smugglers. If their paperwork is not in order, we can take action. But even if we suspect they are smugglers and they have obtained the appropriate permits, we are powerless.
This morning's opening round is not a loss for Albert Chan. In the shell game that is Hong Kong's illicit trade, the police are not the enemy. They are, quite simply, referees. Major Hong Kong film studio. Instead, she landed a minor role in a kung fu movie. Today, Mei Lo is a rising star who sees 1997 as the deadline for fame and fortune. Regina Hua was born in Hong Kong, but educated in Montreal. She has come home to the delicate task of attracting foreign investment. An uncertain future makes her job difficult. Gordon Wu is taking his own elevator to the 64th floor of the office tower he built. He is literally rising above Wan Chai, the honky-tonk neighborhood where he was born and raised. Gordon Wu sees Hong Kong's reunion with China as a business opportunity that comes once in a lifetime. If he's right, he will win in a very big way. If he's wrong, he stands the chance of losing everything. A few years ago, Albert Chan was a cop walking a beat. Today, he is a senior officer within the Royal Hong Kong Police. But in 1997, the police will no longer be royal, and Albert Chan may be out of a job. When Albert Chan assembles his men each morning, he wears the uniform of a British commanding officer and the insignia of the Royal Hong Kong Police.
Now this rock glistens with prosperity. It is a world of quick money and a fast buck, where fortunes have been made and lost overnight. It is a borrowed place living on borrowed time, time that may be running out. This is Hong Kong.
It is midnight on the South China Sea. A small junk from mainland China has strayed across the border into Hong Kong's territorial waters. She is boarded and thoroughly searched by the Royal Hong Kong Police. This is the way it has been for more than 150 years. A tiny British colony, barely half the size of Long Island, dictating the law to China. But in 1997, all this will change when the lease expires and Hong Kong returns to Chinese rule. When China raises the red star over Hong Kong, one of the purest forms of capitalism on earth will be left in the hands of the world's largest communist state. What effect will this dramatic change have upon the 5 million Hong Kong people that created this wildly successful place? Will they stay, or will they leave? May Lo was 17 when she applied for work as a production assistant at a